Hello, I'm Dr. Mary Manjikian, and I teach National Security courses here at the Robertson School of Government. And I had some thoughts I was going to share with you today on the subject of trust between the presidency and the intelligence community. Often in the press today, we read about how relations between the intelligence community and President Trump are not very good. And often what we hear is that Trump is angry, or the intelligence community is fearful, perhaps, that they're going to somehow or other be used by President Trump, or that their work is not going to be appreciated. And what I'd like to suggest today is that rather than thinking about relations between the president and the intelligence community in terms of fear or some other dynamic, we think specifically about the politics and the ethics of trust. Philosophers who talk about trust say basically trust means that you are comfortable delegating an activity or an action to someone else. You're comfortable saying to someone else, go out on my behalf and report the news or invade a country, and I will be comfortable allowing you to act on my behalf to serve my interests because I trust that I can delegate this task to you. So when you trust someone, it really means you're doing four things. It means you believe that they have the same motive in engaging in an activity that you would have if you engaged in that activity. So in other words, if you believe that if you went and looked at the devastation in the Bahamas, for example, you would fairly and accurately assess that situation, then if you trust the media, it means that you believe they have that same motive to fairly and accurately report that situation rather than in some way twisting it. That's what it means to trust the media, to believe they have the same motive. You trust people more when you have an old friendship with them than if there's somebody brand new you've never kind of had dealings with before. So that's the second area, is length of relationship. The third is competence and skills. If you delegate something to someone, you assume that they have the ability to carry out that task, to understand what it is you've asked them to do, and then to go out and do that. And this is why today we often have issues with trusting machines, right? Trusting artificial intelligence or something. We often doubt their competence. And finally, we believe that there's some form of reciprocity, that the person who's reporting the news, for example, is not just doing their job, but also that they feel that they have some relationship with you, that they kind of owe it to you to get the news right. So what does this mean when we look at Trump and the IC? Well, when Trump talks about the IC, does he trust the intelligence community? No. First of all, he doesn't believe that they have the same motive in terms of looking at national security as he does. He believes that often the intelligence community's motive is to in some way hurt him, to withhold information or to twist information. He believes the IC kind of is in the business of making him look bad, I think. And often when he talks about this idea of the deep state, the idea that there are professional, full-time government employees, he believes that these people somehow, the deep state, have a different set of motives than he himself does. Next, he doesn't really trust the competence of the intelligence community, does he? When he says he wanted to know something about Russia, so therefore he asked Putin rather than asking the intelligence community, it suggests that he doesn't believe in their competence. And finally, I don't think he believes that there's any form of reciprocity in this relationship between himself and the IC. I think he thinks the IC is kind of waiting him out. Eventually, at some point, he'll leave, and then they'll go back to doing what they're doing. And so in this Comey memo that he wrote after his first meeting at Trump Tower, when he was the acting director of the FBI, after his meeting with Trump, he said that Trump had asked him, can I count on your loyalty? And in a sense, what Trump was doing here is he was kind of stating that he didn't really trust the FBI. He didn't really trust kind of civil servants. And so he was asking for some form of verbal confirmation that they could indeed be trusted. The thing about loyalty is it's more of a hierarchical relationship. He was asking if he could count on Comey to do what he asked him to do, which is slightly different than asking if he could trust them. Now, how about the IC? How do they view Trump? I think that the IC does not feel that they and the president have the same motive necessarily. When the IC is out collecting intelligence, they may believe that President Trump doesn't think about national security the same way that they do. And the fact that they're not sure how he's going to use this intelligence that they collect and pass on to him suggests that they don't fully trust his motives. They may feel that he cares more about his relationship with Putin, for example, than he cares about national security. Next, you can look at the short tenure that many folks have had at the White House, the fact that we've had so many acting secretaries in so many departments. And so there's not that chance to establish that long friendship. Rather, it's a very new relationship, and so that affects trust as well. And this notion of competence, I don't believe the IC views Trump as competent. We've heard allegations that the IC has withheld information or in some way tailored the information given to the president. And I think this goes to their assessment. They don't believe that he's competent of understanding what secrets need to be held. They don't believe that he's competent to safeguard classified information. And then finally, I don't think they view the relationship as really reciprocal either. I think the IC kind of thinks of themselves as doing their own job for their own purposes, really not meaning to make Trump look good or bad, but just kind of carrying out the task. Finally, when we think about trust, we can talk about this situational trust. How do both of these two actors, the IC and the president, view the decision to delegate to one another? Well, we can also talk about a more sort of global trust, right? Being a trusting person. And what we hear is that Trump is not a trusting person. He trusts his family members more than he trusts outsiders. He's even been described as a little bit paranoid. But I think if we really want to look at the relationship between Trump and the IC, what we really want to do, and what I hope to do in the future, is a larger study looking at how presidents in general have trusted or distrusted the intelligence community, and presidents who've maybe been more or less kind of high or low on that scale of global trust. For example, you can think about how John F. Kennedy preferred to appoint family members, right? He might not have been kind of generally trusting of the outside world. We talk about Truman in the kitchen cabinet. And so all of these presidents, we can think differently about how much they really trusted and delegated to others. And so I just want to kind of share that with you, because I think one of the ways that we can get away from some of the divisive rhetoric in our country is to very clearly define our terms and ask questions not just about Trump, but ask questions about the presidency, ask questions about these kind of larger historical issues. I think of Trump perhaps as one among many presidents, rather than focusing specifically on what is and is not unique about him. Thanks for listening to my thoughts today, and maybe we'll have another chance to have this conversation, hopefully at the Robertson School of Government. Bye.